What a massive week for Battlefield 5. EA Play with all the details surrounding new maps, new modes, gadgets, guns, both for Chapter 4 and even Chapter 5, as well as of course the introduction of the Japanese and American factions alongside so much more content. This is your week on the Battlefield. Welcome to this episode of This Week on the Battlefield, the show where we cover news, updates, the community, and so much more, all around the Battlefield franchise. In this episode then, we have all the new content announced for Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 to cover, fresh of course, straight from EA Play. We also have some smaller news tickets from this week to talk about, and of course, the usual, only in Battlefield moments for you guys to enjoy. Starting off with the news then, as we always do, and this week of course is all about EA Play, Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 of Battlefield 5's Tides of War, and all the new content that we can look forward to going all the way out really until November of this year. But let's get stuck straight into the information that we have. In terms of new maps for Chapter 4, we know in June that we're getting Al Sudan, a North African desert map which is based off one of the single player maps that we have in the single player campaign, but has been significantly altered. It's an actually extremely large map with, I believe, all types of combat, so that's vehicles both in terms of tanks and aircraft, and of course a little bit of infantry combat mixed in there as well, with some wider open areas, but also some more close quarter semi-urban areas of the map to make those of us who prefer infantry combat like the map as well. That map is going to be launching specifically, as confirmed by EA and earlier leaked by Temporal as per usual, the 27th of June. And in July, we're actually going to be getting the Marisha map, which is the second Greece map, and that will also complete, of course, the Grand Operation together with Mercury, giving us not only a new Grand Operation, but also the availability to play as such on those two new maps. Now, Temporal initially found this release date to be actually the 1st of August in the game files. EA has confirmed that it's actually going to be releasing sometime in July, so as it stands now, I would expect it to release sometimes towards the end of July, given that it's kind of just on the border to August. But speaking of August, we have even more maps in August as well. There we're going to be getting the two close quarter maps, Provence and Lofoten, excuse my pronunciation, believed to be mostly for the 5v5 competitive mode, but thanks to a little bit of digging and information provided by one of the DICE developers, specifically Matt Wagner, we do know that there's a little bit more to it, so that these maps are focused on close quarter combat and not necessarily exclusively on the 5v5 modes. And having looked at the maps at EA Play in a little bit more detail in terms of the overhead screenshots and pictures shown, we can see the maps aren't actually that small, and thus my most likely theory as to what exactly we can expect on these maps other than the 5v5 competitive mode is some of these smaller infantry focused game modes. Namely, of course, Squad Conquest, Team Deathmatch, and if Domination makes a return, Domination, and possibly even, with a bit of luck, some good old Frontlines. Then in October, when Chapter 4 ends, but before Chapter 5, we're going to be getting Operation Underground, the Metro Locker remake, which is currently not assigned to either of the chapters, and DICE has also referred to it as between Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. Interesting, but it's definitely going to be a fan favorite, supposedly offering a little bit more in terms of flanking routes and also outside versus underground inside areas than the classic Metro we all love and hate, depending on who you are. So I myself, as most of the course in the community, am most definitely looking forward to this map releasing come October. Then in terms of Chapter 4, what about new guns? And here a quick shout out to both Temporal, our good old trusty data miner, and fellow YouTuber and prolific tweeter Dan Minigun for searching out all of these different weapons in the trailers and the game files respectively. And thanks to that, we do know that in week 1 of Chapter 4, we'll be getting the S2-200, also commonly referred to as the MG30 MMG. Week 3, we're going to be getting the Karabin 1938M, a semi-automatic of Polish origin, and in week 7, we're going to be getting the Panzerbüchse 39 anti-material rifle. Other primaries, found mostly in the trailers for Chapter 4, include the M2 Carbine Plainfield, which seems to be an AR, the Itaka 37 shotgun, the Breda PG 1935, which is what I believe to be the burst-firing assault rifle we previously mentioned in episodes of This Week on the Battlefield, the Flamethrower Pistol, the Madsen MG short variant, the Type 99 or 38, not quite clear, this will be a Chapter 5 weapon because it is a Japanese weapon, and of course, the good old M1 Grand, most likely again to release in Chapter 5 alongside the Japanese-American DLC. Then we have other secondaries and gadgets to mention, most namely and definitely the coolest of them, the suppressed M1911, the M1 bazooka, and of course the well rod. Another little bit of information that we do have available thanks to Temporal is that actually Rush will be returning come July 18th, so for those who have been missing that mode, rejoice, it is coming back. Also, of course, in Chapter 4, we're going to be getting plenty of new vehicles, gadgets, updates to the Firestorm map in terms of new vehicles and weapons in June, and new elites in July in form of Norman Kingsley and Ilse Schattenwolf. As to more finer details on both what those changes, new vehicles and new gadgets entails, of course, we do not know just yet. Those details will be released as we roll into Chapter 4, most likely on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. The last thing, which most definitely cannot be forgotten, is that in September, we will of course be getting private games, reintroducing what is most commonly referred to as RSP to the Battlefield franchise, hopefully with the needed amount of features and functions comparable of course to the good old days back of Battlefield 4. Then of course the big question, what about Chapter 5, the Japanese-American DLC or Introduction to Tides of War? And regrettably EA Play didn't actually provide us many more details beyond what we already knew from the Chapter 4 trailer, which had that kind of little teaser at the end regarding Chapter 5. We have, thanks to the EA Play event, now got a couple of Pacific concept art pieces, which do look relatively nice. We have confirmation that Iwajima is going to be seeing a remake and reintroduction into Battlefield 5. We also know that the developers have been spending a lot of time on Hawaii for the development of these maps. Now this may just be because the climates are relatively similar to some of the Japanese islands and they're taking inspiration from there, or it may be because they're seeking to introduce some kind of air superiority centered Pearl Harbor attack. If I had to make a guess, that would definitely make an awesome addition to launch Chapter 5 of Tides of War on, but that is at this point pure speculation. What we do know for certain, however, that is in Chapter 5, we will be getting 3 maps for the Pacific Theater with both naval and amphibious combat and a brand new game mode, most likely given the amount of hints dropped towards invading and invasion. The new game mode is most likely the previously found, thanks to the data miners, invasion game mode, probably centering around some of the Japanese island, providing a kind of altered version of Grand Operation, scaled down a little bit and made more appropriate and fitting to the setting in which it is played. That is regrettably all we know so far regarding Chapter 5. More details obviously will be following towards the end of Chapter 4. In terms of release dates, it can be assumed that Chapter 5 will start sometime in November, because of course we're getting the Operation Underground in October, but again, that is not completely confirmed and remains to be seen. In the slightly less exciting but still most definitely important news section, this week of course we have to talk about the new Tides of War challenges. Last week of course we got the Fallschirmjäger Switchblade, this week the unlock is the Napalm skin for the Sturmgewehr 1.5, and if you're wondering what you're supposed to be getting next week if you complete the Tides of War challenge, next Thursday we will be getting our hands on a new weapon, the MAB 38 SMG. As per usual, of course, I will be doing a weapon review and guide on that weapon once it actually does come out. If you've been wondering why you found some free and new skins in the armory this week in Battlefield 5, that's because DICE is celebrating EA Play by handing out the Survivalist skin for the MP40, Leenfield, Sturmgewehr 1.5 and KE7, while some users have actually reported getting the skin for the Sten gun instead of the MP40. No comment, at least so far as I'm aware of, from DICE if this is a bug or deliberately there is some variance to which skins you're getting for which weapon. Also this week we got a mini update for Battlefield 5. Update 3.5 fixed a couple of important issues such as the APCR specialization issue for the Boys AT rifle, also some remaining specialization bugs with the M28 Condrombacino, a couple of squashed bugs over on the spectator mode which caused some crashes, and a Firestorm exploit that allowed you to actually enter the map before the actual timer ticked out and anybody else in the game not using that exploit was able to spawn down onto Halvoy. But with that, of course, over to our community news, and there isn't really that much to talk about this week because essentially it's all just hype, memes, and discussions surrounding Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. Already with the announcement of Chapter 4's roadmap and the trailer that accompanied it midweek, we had plenty of hype going through the community, and with EA Play just having happened and all the announcements that have been made there for Chapter 5 and Chapter 4, I don't think that hype train is going to be slowing down anytime soon. So instead of giving you my thoughts, which should be relatively obvious, and going into too much detail here, I'd really like to know what your reaction has been to Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 being announced for Battlefield 5, the new content coming, and if this has made you a little bit more hopeful for the future of Battlefield 5. Do you think DICE is going to be able to turn this ship around just like they did with Battlefield 4, or are you still in the camp which thinks Battlefield 5 is a doomed game and really nobody should play it or buy it at all? But with that, of course, over to our only in Battlefield moment. And first up this week, we have Luckey taking full advantage of the inclusion of the Boys AT rifle in Firestorm and getting himself a nice, clean quad. Next up, we have Ghost showing us what he can do in a plane and really what the rest of us just simply can't do. And lastly in today's video, Ghost back again once more, this time sniping over on Twisted Steel, taking care of countless prone campers over on the bridge section of that map. They don't seem to be quite capable of grasping the concept that their spot may just be a little bit too exposed, so Ghost goes about teaching them this the hard way. But with that, we're coming to the end of this week's episode. If you enjoyed the show, found it interesting or entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share, and of course hit me up with your feedback, suggestions, and opinions down below in the comments or over on Twitter. With all that being said, however, I'd like to thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next episode of This Week on the Battlefield.